Um, Anything else to add, staff? Citizens? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to adopt an ordinance allowing for accessory dwelling units.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Shannon and seconded by Mrs. Long. Questions, concerns, comments? And we'll start right here. Nothing.
I just have two. You mentioned in addition to the main home could be an ADU. Is that because it has its own utility hookups and its own address? What makes it different than just an additional room to a house?
Well, it would be the potential to rent it. I mean, it's really, it wouldn't be any different than an addition to your home for anyone.
So if you're renting a room in your home, does it make it an ADU legally?
Yes.
And I noticed in the wording somewhere in there, it talks about tiny homes being ADUs, but we don't have mechanisms in place in otherwise throughout the city for tiny homes to be acceptable.
No.
So
That's a good question, though. But that was how it was brought up during the planning commission workshops that we had, was what about these tiny homes? I mean, that was kind of really how it boiled down. And it's like, okay, so we can allow those, but the way it's written into the ADUs is they can't be movable. So that kind of eliminates the camper idea part behind them, that you can just pull them in and out all the time and whatever. It has to go there and it has to sit.
sure. The way I'm interpreting it, they could the only place within the city that we have a place for them is as ADUs right now. You cannot have a tiny home as a main residence.
Correct.
There's no subdivision zone, or there's no zoning area that has square footage that low,
Yes. Now,
correct?
it's funny you say that, because I don't, in my readings that I've done over the past year, I haven't seen really a square footage classification. So I will look into that, but that's typically how that goes, is you have to meet a certain square footage, and I have yet to see that in writing.
You're the guy.
Thank you.
Nothing here. Nothing else.
No other questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, vote please.
Voting on a motion to adopt an ordinance allowing for accessory dwelling units. Wood?
Yes.
Gurley?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Reeves?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Before we get going, I believe I may be recalling that a subdivision regulation that requires one subdivision can't be a certain amount less than a subdivision surrounding it. So that would preclude that, I believe.
That could be. I have seen, I dealt with those regulations in the past, though, that subdivisions met a certain square footage of your main houses, and yes, and then that alluded to your neighboring subdivision could only go one class below.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since I looked at any of that. So on to our next item, which is number 9, the zoning ordinance amendment for architectural design standards. Any other staff want to take?
The Mark Lee Show.
Good evening. I'm like, oh, Valentine's Day, great. Okay. Here I am.
You have an excuse now.
I'll call your wife.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, sir. You too. It's I was just sitting in the back earlier. I think it's my 32nd one with my wife.
We'll write you a note of excuse.
Christina can make sure,
Kind of weird to
Yeah,
say,
you better
but I
be-
do believe
better
we've
double
been
up on
married.
that.
now Mark, Christina can make sure that you've got something to take home.
See, we've been married 25. We dated 5 before. Right around there, but anyway. Architectural design standards. That's what we're speaking about right now. Let's get that there. There was actually architectural design standards in the comprehensive plan. They were just in the back and in the appendix and very rarely looked at. And talking with Planning Commission and you guys to a certain extent, I think what we came to the conclusion was that we wanted Bonner Springs to look a certain way. I initially approached Planning Commission and asked if they thought about certain corridors. And then it just turned into, no, you know what, let's do the whole city. So this regulates the form and design of multifamily residential buildings, industrial buildings, and commercial buildings. And really what it boils down to is looks and appeal and how they will look moving forward. Stone, glass, stucco, so on and so forth. Did a little discussion, a little talking about, well, what about downtown? So there wasn't really any specific regulations regarding downtown. And when you look at downtown, you can kind of see a progression through the years. Maybe you start at the river and kind of head up, and the buildings get newer. So it wasn't like we had a true historic district where all the buildings had to look, you know, I don't want to say old, but look historic. So we put some guidelines together to kind of help if someone wanted to redevelop, or there is a couple empty lots there currently that I suppose someone could go build a building on if they wanted to, and how it would look and integrate into the rest of downtown. So we put those guidelines in there too. But again, I went around and I looked at, I think it was 7 or 8 different cities and what their regulations were. Yep, 7 surrounding cities, and didn't necessarily mirror them, but I wanted to see what they had out there and what they were dealing with. And again, I took the design guidelines that were already in our comprehensive plan, and really that's what these boil down to.
Without significant changes, or did you find there needed to be?
No, the only real changes I made, sir, were bringing in some stuff for downtown.
Okay. So the industrial areas required masonry treatment and a certain percentage of the wall to be masonry treated.
Yes, sir.
Which is something we've done for a long time. And the main changes to the core business area, what are those?
Say that one more time, sir. I'm sorry.
The downtown business area, the C1, I think it is. What are those architectural standards?
So we put some in that specifically address downtown and how they should integrate into the surrounding buildings. But really, I can't hardly read that. So here's just some language that I put in there. It says that located within downtown are several different architectural styles, creating an eclectic downtown area that spans old world architecture with mid-century modernism. The intent of the commercial design guidelines is for downtown area to maintain visual appearance and quality of redevelopment and new development that may occur. Downtown Bonner Springs is not considered historical. It has several architectural features that the community sees as valuable assets. And it talks about the site and layout development pattern and the building design. Building design, nothing contained within these regulations shall prohibit the use of modern materials so long as the street level portions of any new construction abide by these regulations. And again, really it boils down to stone and glass, and it's an attempt to preserve the visual appearance of the older buildings in town with allowing some newer style above it. So when you walk along the street, you feel like you're still walking in front of an older building. But there again, not every building in downtown's old or historical in nature, so
Right.
it all lends itself to, and I believe
So there's a lot of room for variance.
there is some, sir, yes. Trying to see, I thought we had something in there that actually talked about the different areas, but I'm not seeing it right now. So here would be an example of, say, if an older building was in disrepair. We have where an original or early storefront no longer exists or is too deteriorated to save, the commercial character of the building should nonetheless be preserved, either through an accurate restoration based on historical research and physical evidence, or contemporary design that is compatible in scale, design, materials, color, and texture of the historical building. So that would be if you have one in town, or the two that have met their demise.
So there's, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do,
Yes.
is get to a spot to where we can look at some of the real situations that are in Bonner Springs. So there's a vacant spot in the 100 block of Oak that has been vacant for many years. And there's a building beside it that is compromised to some extent. The building beside it doesn't appear to be as old as it may be. It's been remodeled several times on the front that faces Oak Street. So you talk about restoration. It may have to be completely restored to similar to what it is now, or similar to what the building next to it, which appears to be about 112 years old. There was a fire on that block in 1902, I think, that took out the majority of the buildings on that street, and those all from 111 all the way on up the street to the 200 block were gutted and rebuilt in about early 1900, 1905, somewhere in there, before the fire stations, or before our fire department started, the birth of the fire department. And so I'm just trying to get a little bit of information.
So it really discusses all buildings shall have primary entry on the street, any pedestrian alley or open space. It talks about awnings, porticos and overhangs, transoms or display windows, architectural details such as tile work, moldings, lintels, pediments, pilasters or columns, integral planners. There's not so much you must have stone and you must have stucco. It's more to maintain the older appearance of the buildings.
Okay, and I think that's amenable and very appropriate for certain properties. However, there's a large property that hopefully is in the process of being redeveloped, working its way through that process. And that was a 1960s building that has completely failed and needs to be demolished right beside a building that was obviously built around 1900. So are they going to have to rebuild back to a 1960 level, or are they going to have to come back to a 1900 level, or just make it look similar to all of that?
In that respect, it would just be to look similar.
Okay.
And it would really, the way they were written is it really focuses on that ground level. That as you walk by is your pedestrian interaction. So once you get above that first story, which it actually lists out a height, should be anywhere from 10 to 20 feet tall. First story shall be between 10 and 20 feet high. Any stories above that, it talks about their heights. But once you get above that ground level view, you can start to change materials and shape.
And a lot of infill multifamily apartment buildings have these different appearing components as they go down the apartment building. And they also have breaks in the height of it. Every floor has a different module, more or less. I don't know what that concept is called, but sometimes they incorporate colors that go along with the scheme of the architecture across the whole development. Sometimes they bring in many colors to make it appear as though it's multiple developments, but it's all one big apartment complex. I've seen also the same ones done with a false front. There's some very nicely done storage buildings that are in surprising areas that have fronts on them that look like brownstones, and they look very good. And that type of facade may or may not be cost prohibitive for a development. So as long as it's able to be varied, because it's so variable here, and this is a design standard that has those options, variances available to it, I think this is a great way to start to help that development have a consistent character with the neighborhood. But requiring them to go back to a certain is impossible to enforce or know which one's the best. So as long as there's it's able to be varied quite significantly, I think that would be a good idea.
And that was part of the discussions we had. Like I said, when you start down by the river and start walking up Oak Street, you can see the progression and how the buildings change. And when you get to the bank, you're like, oh, wait, now I'm in 1980 something.
It's very nice of you to tell them that. Yeah.
Then you go across the street,
But
and
there-
there's that beautiful school.
Right. Well, and there's some, there's all different types of buildings on Oak Street and across the downtown. This building right here is 100 years old. The building right beside it is brand new and looks like it. So requiring others to do different than what we've done, I don't see how we can do that. So as long as there's a easy way to vary these architectural design standards or request a variance.
There's always variance.
Very good. Other questions, concerns, comments? Sorry, I didn't mean to belabor anything. Seeing none, vote please.
We need a motion.
Oh, goodness.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt an ordinance implementing the architectural design standards.
Second.
So moved by Mrs. Gurley and seconded, I'll say, by Mr. Shannon. Seeing any other questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, vote please.
Voting on a motion to adopt an ordinance implementing architectural design standards. Wood?
Yes.
Reeves?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Gurley?
Yes?
Long?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And moving right along to the reports this evening, City Manager's report.
Just one quick note, the state of Kansas through the Spark Committee, those have been paying attention. This is a committee that was put together about, I don't even know time anymore, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago roughly, to go through federal allocations that were coming down. So initially the CARES Act, and then it was the American Rescue Plan. So what they have devised is a program called BASE, which is building, I wrote it down, building a stronger economy. I want to say economic base, but anyway, I bring this up because this has a pretty tight turnaround as far as a grant program is considered. There's a lot of stipulations for it. Just want you to all be aware, and if you have any concerns or questions, please let me know. But would like to submit for our water plant on this project. I say that knowing full well that there's been about $100 million of allocation to this program. The top allocation request is $25 million, which is pretty much what we're talking about for the expense of this water plant. Again, it's a tight time frame, so there's not going to be a lot of time to discuss it or go through it in nauseam like we typically do. But again, this is a base. We're hopefully going to apply for the water treatment plant. There is a matching component that I'm working with right now to make sure that we do have the proper matching component. If our SRF loan works for the match is what I'm getting at there. I believe it closes at the end of this month. It just opened last week, I believe. So again, a lot of stipulations as far as what's eligible. So as we kind of went through it as a staff, there's not a lot of projects that we have that are ready within 60 days of signing a contract with them that have impacts of COVID. The other one we kind of looked at was Nettleton Extension, as we were talking about before, but we're not anywhere close to meeting most of those objectives. So again, just wanted to make you all aware of that process and our hopeful Pollyanna about it, but it'd be nice if we could help offset some of that cost, because we all know that was a project that was extremely impacted by COVID, supply chain issues, and still is as far as our cost. But gosh, what a heck of a project to be able to get done and really highlight this program as far as building our economy with everything we have going on here. So Other than that, that is all I have this evening.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move to city council items, and we'll just start down here with Mr. Reeves.
Happy to be here.
Nothing from me this evening.
I've been asked to check on an update on the 125 Oak building that we were just talking about.
Well, I was inferring,
Amber Vogan, Assistant City Manager. That building is still going through the process of, they're trying to find funding right now. They've worked with a couple of different banks, and trying to get through that process is kind of where they're at now. They worked through their probate process. They have plans that they want to renovate the building, but finding the funding to do so. We've also helped them apply for some grants, but so far they've not been awarded, unfortunately.
Not to sound unkind, but can that just hang out forever?
No, it's going to get to the point very soon that we're going to have to.
I know the neighboring buildings are concerned about it affecting their structural integrity as well.
Right. Yeah, we're going to have to.
Pretty soon, is that this calendar year? Is
Yes.
it
Yes.
6 months? Is it?
I would say before summer, definitely. We're going to have to figure something out there.
Thank you. That's all I have, believe it or not.
I did love watching the camel story on national television. They were really good at what they, the talking about it and everything. And Bonner Springs hit the national, okay.
very good. Yeah, for a good reason.
For a good reason.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting that on there.
Nothing else. All right, well, I'll keep mine short as far as the mayor's report goes. Yeah, kudos to the police department for their continued success in their public relations. I don't know if you go to police conventions, if you have to bear the brunt of that still, but yes, I'm that well earned. So yeah, live it up. The since our last meeting, I had an opportunity to meet Sean and Amber, and I went in and spoke with Mayor Gardner and our Commissioner Stites concerning issues that concern Bonner Springs, and they are aware of some of the things that we've been working with, and are certainly making a commitment to listen. They have valued our input and look forward to hearing what our concerns are and what our needs are here in Bonner Springs from our county administration. And with Sean's request, having the emergency management office come out here and let us know their updates. These are things we can look forward to, and the way our county can serve Bonner Springs. So I appreciate that. They also had a issue come before the County Commission and the Unified Government of Kansas City, Kansas. It was concerning a city resolution in Kansas City, Kansas, Unified Government of Wyandotte County, was called Safe and Welcoming Neighborhoods. And I encourage everyone to read up on what was passed in the different aspects of that topic. I would suffice to say just about everyone is in favor of the priorities and the objectives that this idea tries to support. I did speak virtually on their meeting in a personal capacity, and recognizing that it does not affect Bonner Springs as a city. Our county is, the city of Kansas City, Kansas is doing this in Wyandotte County. No, the city of Kansas City, Kansas has a city resolution concerning this, and they are making it available to Wyandotte County residents to get a community ID. And some of the concerns are this community or ID will be done by a 501c3 or a independent group. And it's, the ordinance didn't lay out what I felt were enough appropriate controls over those situations to limit some of the concerns that a lot of people have concerning fraud and mismanagement. So hopefully with their RFP for that, with the successful contract, it will line out all the specifics, and that's some of the areas that I'll continue to try and watch for. They made mention on their lengthy discussion, longer than this meeting has been, that they're going to address all those concerns. However, that remains to be seen. So the mechanics are mostly what I was concerned about with the ID portion of that program. The second aspect of it was a resolution that codifies the policy that the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department's already working under, and the manner in which they work with or coordinate with certain federal agencies concerning immigration, individuals that may not have immigration status may be different than ours. That's a good way to put it. And so for this program to be successful, they need to have these things advertised to that community so they feel safe and able to participate in the community in an appropriate manner and keep their rights and their persons safe. The ID will be something that allows them to make police reports and have access to certain city functions that they may not have been able to access because they didn't have an appropriate ID. It will not allow them to drive a car. Anyone who has this is not specially able to drive a car. It does not replace a state federal ID. It is not a voter registration. It is just a municipal ID so they can access some city benefits that we're all eligible for. It's no different than what anyone with other ID is eligible for that has residency in the county. If you do have other questions, I'm sure Sean's much more better versed than I am concerning it. He also listened to what they were presenting, and as well as our commissioners, Commissioner Stites and Burrows, if you have any other questions. But I received a lot of inquiry concerning this issue, and wanted to make sure that it didn't impact the Bonner Springs proper without doing the due diligence and the appropriate research on what is needed in our community. In that effort, I reached out to both Sean to check and see if we've had any concerns in those areas, and we haven't. And the school district as well doesn't have any functional problems with anyone having a lack of ID. So functionally, there's no, that I've been able to find any situations that warrant this at the current time for us. If that changes, I'll certainly, or if anyone has any concerns, certainly let us know. But other than that, I don't have anything else to add, and would like to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day, especially Mr. Lee's wife. With him having such a cold, you may want to delay the smooches until later. So, 32 years, I know. Yeah. Are you sure? Other than that, I stand for questions, and we're adjourned.